Well, hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Mr. Cole, how are you, sir?
Well, thank you. How about yourself?
Excellent, excellent. How is the weather down in Jersey?
Uh, Humid, hot and humid.
I've escaped the hot weather in DC. I'm up in Maine for the week.
Oh, good for you.
But even here, it's 80 degrees, which was a little warmer than I thought.
Oh,
Well,
well,
I'm not complaining.
seems to be the trend.
I'm a climate refugee for the week. I'll put it that way. So what's happening in New Jersey? I've been reading your posts between the New Jersey and New York City. Is that a
Yeah,
little boxing match happening?
that seems to be the case. Yeah, well, any plan such as this is going to generate a lot of controversy and a lot of emotion, and it's not disappointing in that regard because it's providing it in spades.
That's right. It gives the journalists something to work on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think though everybody's watching because every every city is that has similar congestion is starting to think the same thing.
For sure, for sure. I mean, though, there are cities that wouldn't face quite this type of political challenge. Places like San Francisco or LA do not have the amount of cross-state traffic that New York City has, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and New York and New Jersey are often in pissing matches about monies spent on, public transportation and infrastructure and who's getting the benefit of it and who's paying for it, that kind of a thing. So this is just a continuation of a decades-long trend between the states of New York and New Jersey.
I think we're about to see the same thing down in Washington D.C. when that federal transit funding from the pandemic sort of falls off a cliff and everyone's scrambling to fund transit.
Yeah, yeah.
Greg
So,
Kruger down in Florida, they don't have those issues. They've solved all the funding issues, it seems like.
huh.
How are you, sir?
That we build Disney World and the like and let all the tourists pay. Great.
It feels like it. It feels like I paid for everything in Florida every time I go down. It's but a great place to be. Mr. Bill McKinley. Speaking of people in cooler places, give us a temperature check in Scotland.
Yeah, hi, Jason. Let me turn the audio up a little bit here. How are things?
Oh, fantastic, fantastic! I've escaped DC for the week, but I know my friends down there have 100 degrees Fahrenheit this week. But Scotland, nice and cool, right?
Yeah, it's
Give us a couple of minutes, folks. We're people are joining. I see we have our guest speaker, Mr. Alan Davis from the Peachtree State. Welcome, sir.
Howdy.
Howdy, howdy. Mr. Brian Romansky, the great state of Connecticut. Welcome, sir.
Book your big drive up 95. That'll go well to traffic.
That's right. That's right. I'll tell you what, that stretch of Connecticut. I felt so good when I made it over the George Washington Bridge. And that stretch of Connecticut was like the longest interstate stretch I've ever done. They need toll roads there, I think. I think that's
That's
the
right.
solution.
That's right. Needs to cost more. That's right.
Something to it. Hot sun. How are you, sir?
Hello.
Mr. Gander's in the house. All right. Mr. Bob Roush. Welcome, Bob. Long time no see.
Yeah, not since last month, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Craig Hendricks. Welcome, welcome. We'll give it about 2 minutes, and then I'll ask for Ken to kick off with our antitrust. Mr. Steve Novosad.
Howdy.
Chairman of the board. All right, welcome, sir. think that was Frank Sinatra's name, right? Okay.
Oh, good afternoon.
Ah, Manfred, good to see you, sir. And Mr. 248, welcome. Mrs. Cantlow, can we pull the slides up? I think you're muted, by the way. See, I think the hot weather has everybody inside, so they're able to join the call. That's why we have a good crowd.
Whenever you're ready.
All right, let's get started. And we'll welcome folks as they join. Rakendi, would you like to start with the antitrust?
Sure, just a huge favor. I see a couple people that are not muted. If you can go ahead and mute, that would be great. Let me minimize my screen. Well, welcome everybody. We are here at the July monthly meeting. Good to see all of your faces. To those of you who have chosen to turn on your video, love to see everybody. So here we go. It is the policy of the OmniAir Consortium that the organization, its officers, board of directors, members, and participants in its activities shall comply in all respects with federal and state antitrust and/or fair competition laws, regulations, and rules as may be applicable. Accordingly, no activity or discussion of any OmniAir sponsored meeting or other function relating to competition or relating to practices that may restrain trade is permitted. Such prohibited topics include establishing prices, allocating markets, encouraging boycotts, regulating production, or any other understanding or agreement that may be construed as anti-competitive. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Jason, I should say, for our agenda and getting started.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Rakendi, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join. I am technically on vacation this week, but I up in the state of Maine to escape some of that heat in Washington, D.C. I think it's 100 degrees down there and about 20 degrees cooler where I am. So I hope you guys are cool and relaxed and staying safe from the weather today. But we have a pretty full agenda. We're going to talk about some things happening in the life of OmniAir, a few activities. We'll have a little bit of an update on our Plug Fest and our working group updates. And then our chair, Steve Novosad, will introduce our guest speaker, Alan Davis from the Georgia Department of Transportation, to talk about Georgia's plans for C-V2X deployment. A lot happening in the Peachtree State, so we're really looking forward to that. All right, let's get started. I'd like to thank all of our OmniAir members for your continued support for the organization. You can see that one of the unique things about OmniAir is that we do represent a very broad cross-section of the connected vehicle and tolling ecosystem. We have test laboratories, test equipment providers, device manufacturers, automotive OEMs, tier 1 suppliers, engineering firms, and deploying agencies, including state DOTs and tolling organizations. So on the top line, you'll see our sustaining partners, our executive members below, and then our associate members. If you know of organizations that we should be reaching out to who would be help OmniAir advance its mission of promoting interoperability and certification for connected vehicles, ITS, and tolling, please do send them our way. Next, please. So we have a new sub-working group that we are developing. We're incubating this right now in the kind of quiet months of summer. I'm going to be kicking this off in the fall, and this is for certifying aftermarket safety devices. OmniAir has long offered certification for full OBUs, RSUs, as well as modules. And now we're looking at the unique needs of aftermarket safety devices. And when you think about this, some of the earliest deployments that we'll be seeing will be in aftermarket devices for fleets, also for bicycles, e-bikes, vulnerable road users. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the press from our members, including Auto Talks and Consignia and Spoke, and some of the great things they're doing to protect pedestrians, bicyclists, scooter riders. Also some of the aftermarket devices that similar to what we saw with the SRC market. I think we'll see some of the first deployments there, and not all of those will have the same full functionality of traditional OBU. So what are those certification needs? Are there different levels of certification? We're going to be doing a market survey in that group for the first couple of months, and then we'll be moving into developing some test cases and some program scopes, with hopefully having a new program sometime in the new year. We have tapped Roger Babur from Danlaw, which is one of our leading OBU manufacturers in the membership, to help lead this effort. Roger, are you on the call today? Well, Roger, I'm sure will join us in September when we do really kick this off. In the meantime, if you are interested in joining this working group or any of the OmniAir working groups, please follow the link that Ryan has just put in the chat box. Sign up. We would love to have your expertise and time and helping make this working group a success. Next, please. So I don't want to belabor this, as we do have a guest speaker, but there is, we think, a pressing need, and we also think that that there's a greater chance that we'll see more of this deployment aftermarket devices before we see OEM installed devices, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this. Next, please. And let's just skip. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple of other activities that are happening at OmniAir. For a long time, many of you may be aware that we've had a test control interface that we developed first in cooperation with Federal Highway Administration to ease and to automate testing, to make that easier for devices and test equipment providers to automate OmniAir's test cases. We have decided after some long deliberation to open that up to non-members that have been exclusive to OmniAir members before. So we now have a public access GitHub. I'll ask Mick Conley, who's been our running point on this, to drop a link to that GitHub in the chat box. If you've never accessed that, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. We've also had webinars on the OmniAir test control interface, and we'll plan to share the links to those instructional videos. If you have questions, reach out to Nick or Randy or myself about that. We're very excited about this. We're still making a couple of adjustments to some of the note files, but we'll be making an announcement in the beginning of August. Other activity we have going on is that we are planning for sometime in September a virtual testing event. It's not a full plug fest, but it will be a remote virtual testing event focused specifically on 1609.2.1, which is an incredibly important standard for CBDX security. And I'm going to ask Brian Romansky, who chairs our cybersecurity working group, to talk a little bit about what this event will be and how you can participate. And I know there'll be a registration available soon. In the meantime, you can reach out to staff if this is something of interest. Mr. Romansky, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So well, as Jason said, there's going to be testing for 1609.2.1. We've got several SCMS providers who will be available. So we're going to schedule sessions between device manufacturers and SCMS providers. So we have, again, several SCMS providers who have already implemented the 1609.2.1 protocol. They've done their own in-house testing. This will be a first chance to do sort of larger scale interoperability testing. We have just earlier this year published the test plan for 1609.2.1. So this will be a chance to give that a test run and get some feedback on the suite of tests that are defined in there. And so to move forward with this, we're going to be sending out a survey to device manufacturers asking if you're interested in doing this testing, specifically which tests in the defined test suite might you be able to support. And we'll be doing the same for the SCMS vendors. And like we do for the live in-person test events, we'll be scheduling sessions where we pair up device vendors with SCMS providers, and each combination will run through a set of tests, and we'll collect some results and publish anonymized results just to show the level of interoperability and support and success among the test plan in the test suite. So looking forward to that, hoping to motivate the market to show that .2.1 is here and is supported and interoperability is successful. So that is the goal of doing this. So again, look forward to some more details coming out. And if you're a device vendor, you should be receiving a survey that will ask you for some, if your level of interest and what you'd be able to support. If you don't see that come out, you could pin your OmniAir contact. We'll make sure we get that to you. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. And of course, Brian's also with Integrity Security Services. They'll be helping to support that event along with Saysol Tech, Microsec, BlackBerry, and our other SCMS providers are welcome to do that as well. Now, reminder, this event is really just in preparation to see where everybody is, help them move forward. And then we're going to again have this type of testing as part of that full suite of lab and field testing in our semi-annual Plug Fest happening the week of November 6th through 10th in Taipei, Taiwan. And all of this leading up to the goal, which I think is the shared goal for everyone, is C-V2X certification. We want to make sure that there are trusted communications devices that are available for deployment, because we think that that helps to lead to more ubiquitous deployment. It creates more market choice for OEMs and for agencies thinking about requiring OmniAir certification, and it ensures that that devices conform to industry standards and meet minimal interoperability and security requirements. And if you are interested in certifying, especially for RSUs, that is now open. We also offer certification for OBUs and modules. You can click on this QR code or just reach out to staff, and you can also sign up and apply for certification online. We now have 3 test laboratories that are authorized for C-V2X testing: TÜV Rheinland, DEKRA, and TTA. So please avail yourself of any of those. But before you talk to the labs, you want to apply for certification. We'll develop a test plan and be able to take that to each of the labs for quotation. And if you have any questions, reach out to Randy or Ryan or myself. Next, please. And as I mentioned briefly, we are hosting our next OmniAir Plug Fest in Taipei, Taiwan. We are doing this in partnership with the Taiwan Telematics Industry Association. We have a number of members who have already signed up to help. I believe Qualcomm is assisting with testing Unix, TÜV Rheinland, as well as others. I see that we've had some of our first devices sign up. There is an early bird pricing through August 15th of $4,000. And of course, we have a VIP code if you want a further $500 off of that, but you must register and pay now in order to do that. These discounts are only available if you're registering and paying online. So we have a technical PlugFest preparation sub-working group chaired by Aaron Moore of Drive Ohio that meets on a biweekly cadence. And if you're interested in participating in that, just reach out to Ryan or Randy or myself. Next, please. And I'm very excited to note that we are having a call for speakers for this PlugFest. We will have both a plenary session with some very high-level officials from the Asia Pacific region, including ministries of transport and communication, economic affairs, digital affairs, as well as some industry leaders. We also will have breakout technical sessions on some of the topics, including V2X testing and certification around the world, cybersecurity, and some of the other interesting topics that we have done in the past, and probably a few new things. So if you are interested, follow that QR code or reach out to Brenda or myself if you are interested in speaking. Also, I know that this is some extensive travel for some, and if you need a letter of invitation, we can certainly assist with that as well. Next, please. Working group. We have an ever growing number of working groups and sub-working groups, but we do have 2 openings, 2 leadership positions, and we wanted to raise those in case people may be interested in applying. Part of Parikh of SGS has had to step away from his role, which has been for the past couple of years of chairing our certification working group. He's done an outstanding job in leading that and helping develop our certification matrix and some program scopes. But unfortunately, there's been a reorganization within his company, and he just will not be able to take on that leadership role. So we are looking for an OmniAir member to step up if you are interested in that. Focus of this group is our policies, procedures, and program scopes. Please reach out to myself or to the chair, Mr. Novosad. Also, we've had for the past couple of years a small initiative, which we think will be growing larger very quickly, on road usage charge and VitaX-based tolling. Suzanne Murtha of AECOM, after several years at the helm, is stepping away from that and opening up a new opportunity for someone to take the lead on that activity. And that primary focus at the moment is developing testing and certification programs for road usage charge. And so lots of activity there. If you're interested in any of these leadership positions, please do reach out. Next, please. And speaking of our working groups, I'm going to ask Mr. Randy Roebuck to step forward and quickly walk us through our working group updates, and then I'll bring it back to introduce Steve Novosad, who will introduce our guest speaker. Mr. Roebuck, floor is yours, sir. Is Randy on the call? Mick, are you
Yes, he may be having trouble. Randy's on the call, but I see the icon mute going on and off. He may be having audio issues.
Okay, well, I'll just start off. So
You want me to read them, Jason?
go for it, Mick. You got it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if Randy comes on and jumps in, we'll let him take over. Technical working group, it's a lot of work. Probably the one statement here doesn't do justice with the amount of work that is happening in there, but they're updating several test specifications and other documents based on feedback from the stakeholders and members, as well as getting updates from the industry, from standard bodies, and incorporating those into the OmniAir documents. The tolling and emerging payments technology working group, they did complete the final points for multi-protocol device certification. So that was an accomplishment, exploring the next major things regarding emerging payment technology. So there's a little investigation going there. RSU sub-working group, as was announced, we are now going to certify. They continue to look at industry documents and give feedback, walk through the NEMA TS10 update, providing comments and having some joint sessions with NEMA. They continue to work through the ITE CTI 4001 requirements in preparation for completion of test cases in the upcoming OmniAir board meeting to get approval. VDX application sub-working group pushing to finalize an announcement message. That's the announcement of a safety message and seek vendor adoption. So there's a lot of work going there in cooperation with what we call our use case subgroup. Commence work on the red light violation warning, bench testing, and develop process for certification process for new applications. We are incorporating more and more safety messages, and we'll look at ways to better test those for device manufacturers. The RUC and V2X based tolling interface, testing criteria identified for industry standard J3217, fee collection standard and looking to generate test cases in that area. And start looking at 3271/R standard draft for industry testability within OmniAir certification programs. Next slide, please.
I think that was the 3217.
Oh,
/
okay.
R standard.
Thank you. Certification work group. Again, Jason mentioned that, we are looking for a chair there. In the meantime, staff, myself will take over that. So we will continue to have meetings. OmniAir test cases have been broken down by specification in a Excel format. So we can see in one snapshot what test specification, what test numbers are mandatory, optional, and so forth. Revalidating test cases and test systems approach. Cybersecurity, a lot of work going on in there, as well as some Tiger teams. Planning the virtual plug fest, as Brian mentioned, so I won't read that bullet. Again, we're looking for people who want to participate. This will give you an opportunity before the major plug fest on, your functionality, your ability, probably some insight into your development. So I think it's well worth it for people to get engaged here. Also working on revised test plan for IEEE 1609.2. This work will extend the current security test plan to include new features. Continue to work on defining test cases relating to CTI 4001 RSU specification. Again, this just extends the test procedures that we currently have in place. Then we do get into, as I mentioned, there's some Tiger teams in the cybersecurity. A lot of work with some new test cases that have been contributed by some members for 1609 2.1. Not only positive test cases, but negative test cases. So we, OmniAir, as well as the members, are going to start emphasizing security more and more as the industry is demanding it. And in that emphasis will be some negative test cases. So our test plan, as many of you know, they start with a 3-digit number and maybe a letter. In this case, it's 764B. And we're, going ahead and looking at these new contributions and how to integrate them into our test plans. Then let's consider the SEMS provider. This virtual plug fest. I think that's what that statement's towards, although in our major plug fest, as we did in Florida, we certainly want their participation as well. Next slide, please.
And thank you, Mick, very much.
You bet.
And as always, get involved. As you can see, our working groups are really not these kind of Washington, D.C. policy groups that you see in so many organizations these days. We are really very technically focused. We need experts, we need developers, we need standards experts, we need engineers to roll up their sleeves and help make this happen. We are a member-driven organization, so lots of opportunities to get involved. You can have an unlimited number of representatives from the organization populate our working groups. Every company or agency gets one vote per working group, but you can have as many there participating as possible. Please click on this QR code or reach out to Brenda if you want to get involved. And I believe that brings us next to our guest presentation. And I would like to introduce the introducer. Mr. Stephen Novosad is the chair of the board of directors of OmniAir Consortium, a position where he has served in leadership for the past several years, helping to guide the growth of this organization. Mr. Novosad is also an associate fellow and assistant vice president with H&TB Corporation, where he has done a great deal of work in the great state of Georgia and a few other states, and I think is well positioned to lead the Q&A and for our guest speaker, Mr. Alan Davis. Mr. Novosad, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, I'd like to introduce Alan. I've known Alan for several years now, and I've enjoyed working with him and collaborating with him over the years. Alan currently serves as the state traffic engineer with the Georgia Department of Transportation. He has previously led the department's signal operations program and effort in connected vehicle deployments and applications. And I will note that I believe Alan's one of the most technically savvy people when it comes to connected vehicle, although he might disagree with me, but he knows his stuff. And prior to working at GDOT, Alan has both worked in the private and public sector, primarily in traffic and technology. And he's a graduate of the University of South Carolina, and we'll forgive him for that. So Alan, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate the invitation to be here with you all today. It's just looking through the participants here, it's quite a crowd of champions of this sector and this industry. And so I'm happy to talk a little bit about what we've done in the space of connected vehicles. And I'll start with a slide with a lot of words on it that I won't read through, but just want to set the stage of where we started and how we kind of got to where we are now. We really entered the connected vehicle space back around 2017 when AASHTO, American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, issued their SPAT challenge. And I'm sure everyone in this room is fairly familiar with that, of deploying connected vehicle infrastructure at signalized intersections in every state by the year 2020. We saw it as a great entry point for us as an agency to understand what we needed to do to support connected vehicles, where our gaps were, where our successes were, and where we could scale. And it went well. We deployed 2 corridors, 54 intersections worth, and saw that it fit in well nicely with our architecture. And frankly, a lot of the work that my predecessors had done for a couple of decades before in the traffic and ITS sector, and really building up the system that supports so much of infrastructure-based operations here. Fast forward through a few years here, and with our success at that pilot, we saw the need to expand beyond just a pilot. We wanted it to be an actual project, a program that deployed this. 2 corridors and 54 intersections is interesting, but what if we enabled this technology across an entire region? And mind you, this was 2018, so things were great. We were excited. OEMs were making announcements for deployment. And we were going to be ready on our infrastructure side to support these mobility and safety applications that were going to have such a huge impact on our day-to-day operations that are centered around safety and mobility as an infrastructure owner operator. But regulatory actions and pandemics and things slowed things down a bit and changed direction, but we still saw the benefit and need to invest in deploying connected vehicle infrastructure. So over the next few years, we received a couple US DOT grants, had a partnership with our local MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization in the Atlanta area, the Atlanta Regional Commission, on adding to the deployments we were doing as well. And even in as recent as last year, of leveraging the new infrastructure bill to fund additional deployments over time. So that brings us up to where we are, and I'll get into a little bit about where we're going beyond 22 towards the end here. But if you go on to the next slide, please. Or if I can do it. There we go. Thank you. Just to give you a little snapshot of where we started, I mentioned a bit of the investments we had made previously on our system to operate things like traffic signals and ITS. We already had a lot of pieces in place to make this work. And so we really established our system to broadcast information in 2 different paths. One was on this side of things that was supporting data analytics and things that didn't have time sensitivity associated with them, using existing APIs and protocols like that to be able to take traffic signal data and some of the connected vehicle elements in there, data elements, and send those out over the traditional internet. We've had a number of partners that have wanted to get that information, use that information for various applications, and we saw a benefit there. But we also wanted to be able to send that same information out directly to vehicles to be used. And the path in which we chose those things to go about really depended on how it was used from the application side. But it really sets the framework for how our architecture was structured, where our infrastructure itself is what's producing and generating much of the data, packaging up into its appropriate data framework, and then forwarding out to roadside units in the field to be able to apply the security layer and forward it out to vehicles and ingest it that way. To me, in a lot of ways, this is what allowed us to scale how we have having this common architecture across the state to be able to simply hang a radio up to grossly simplify the actual process. Made it helpful for us to be able to deploy quickly and at a large scale. Next slide, please. So I'll walk through various slides and pictures here of what these deployments look like. So over on the left is our initial deployment. I'm sure you all can probably recognize the make and model of all of these radios RSUs we put up. But our first deployment was the good old Lear RSU. We've since had to take those down since we could not change the channel on them when the FCC reduced the available spectrum for connected vehicles and transportation. But those were our first deployments. We had 54 of those radios up. And as we scaled that up, we moved on to the picture in the middle there, and that's a CODA unit. And that's the majority of what we have deployed in Metro Atlanta are radios like that. It's been helpful for us to be able to scale that out and use it. And again, we use those radios as largely an immediate forward mode, and with most of our message generation happening on the infrastructure side for us. So that those two left pictures represent the initial deployment for us. And I mentioned a partnership project we have with the regional MPO, where further on, we feel like we had learned a few things. We felt like we were fairly knowledgeable in deployment of RSUs and wanted to be thinking about the future of how we could scale this out and continue to maintain the interoperability of these devices and what this statewide approach to connectivity could look like. So we thought we'd be smart and put some extra language from a specification standpoint in our procurement and also include CV2X. So in our infinite wisdom, we put some lines in our specifications requiring OmniAir certification. Obviously for our DSRC units and for CV2X, we put some language in there requiring intent to certify the devices when testing and such was coming about. And, we thought we were real smart. This would get us some quality hardware. It would have some future proofing to it. We would really know what we were doing. And I think I was talking to Nick from Drive, Ohio, when I was sharing this with him. He looked at me and goes, "Well, that's cool. Which certifications did you put in there?" And I said, "What do you mean, which ones?" He's like, "Well, there's a bunch of tests. There's all kinds of different certifications." So a little bit of egg on our face there, but and the moral of the story is that we still ended up getting quality radios and hardwares out there for us. But this whole process for us as an agency full of a bunch of civil engineers and traffic engineers who don't necessarily work in the wireless space or traditionally have been in this side of technology have had a lot to learn along the way, and we're still learning a tremendous amount. Every step we take, we think we're doing the right thing, and we learn either unintended consequences or we miss the bigger picture or things like that. So all that to say too is, in the midst of this learning, we rely tremendously on organizations like OmniAir and many of the organizations you all represent to help us make good decisions, good investments for our infrastructure. We couldn't do it without you. And so we continue to rely on that partnership and that technical wellspring of knowledge that you all have to do this. But wrap it all up on this picture on the right is a lot of our deployments look like today, where we actually are putting up 2 separate radios. Mostly due to how the bids came in for that procurement. That's how it was structured. Rather than a combination unit that had 2 radios in it, it's 2 physical radios that are being deployed out. One still DSRC and one CV2X. And we can only turn one of them on, which I'll get to in a second. Next slide, please. And just a quick look of where we are deployment-wise in the state. We have over 1,700 RSUs across the state, largely in Metro Atlanta. Again, building off of that signalized infrastructure backbone. Originally, wanting to deploy this to support private vehicles, but as that delay was introduced for that deployment, we focused on public sector fleet applications, largely around traffic signal preemption and priority for emergency vehicles, freight vehicles, and transit vehicles. those are things we can leverage and utilize the system for now. And honestly, in the Metro Atlanta use case, there are something like 15 or 16 different transit agencies, and each one of them want to interact with our system to be able to facilitate transit signal priority. And you can imagine the complications from a network and technology side and even security side when we're having to integrate 15 to 20 different systems and hardware elements and stuff to enable things like transit signal priority. The fact that we can rely on an interoperable, standardized to a certain degree system like what V2X provides is a huge benefit for us for an agency to enable things like preemption and priority. It's one simple interface we have to work with. It's built around security. It checks a lot of boxes for us. I'll point out too, just over in the western part of the state is where we have a deployment called with the Ray and Panasonic and Kia, Georgia. That's been a very interesting project out there where we focus more on rural interstate applications and actually outfitting some Kia executive fleet vehicles at their facility in LaGrange. Very cool partnership there. It was great to work with those folks on that. And down in the southeastern part of the state in Savannah, we have a deployment down there. That's where we demoed a lot of freight signal priority. The Savannah port down there is, I think, the third largest container port in the US by container volume. And so we're pretty proud of that, but that does mean a huge influx of trucks on our roads, and any way we can work to improve freight efficiency, we try to jump on that as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So talking about where we are now today, most of that map I just showed you is we have DSRC based radios, and at some point we intend to replace those with CB2X. But our problem is we just can't now. When the FCC issued out their ruling to reduce the spectrum and their plans for deployment of CB2X in the 5.9 band, they introduced some streamlined rules for obtaining a waiver to be able to deploy before final rules were issued. We thought that was great. Streamlined sounds wonderful. We issued or put in requests for licenses for LTE CB2X to be deployed back in September 2021 under this streamlined framework, and those are still pending. We've had no movement on those. A few months later, we saw the joint waiver, as it's known as, come through. We did not sign on to that one at the time, as we thought, why do we need to sign on to another waiver? We already have waivers in. And of course, this past spring, we saw that those waivers were granted. And it was a great celebration at ITS World Congress in Texas, which we were at, but we were the grumpy folks in the corner with our arms crossed over our chests, wondering where our waiver was. So it's a bit frustrating for us, but our status there is still pending for the waivers we've requested, along with many, many others who are eager to deploy and operate in this space with CB2X. I'll get to that, how that applies to our further deployment plans in just a second. Next slide, please. Just real quick to talk about a few ways in which we're using this. I mentioned some of the applications we're using from the public sector fleet. This first one was where we tested out transit signal priority. The transit agency wanted to make sure transit signal priority was a feasible strategy for them for achieving their reliability goals on their transit routes. And we wanted to demonstrate that the technology interaction between connected vehicles and our infrastructure to accomplish transit signal priority was effective. So we had a lot of help from Southwest Research on making this happen. And it was a successful pilot for us to be able to implement this and see reliability improve on transit buses on one of their least reliable routes traditionally. Next slide, please. I mentioned the freight signal priority pilot. So the way the infrastructure is interacted with is very similar to transit signal priority. It's just your vehicle type has changed. Really two applications here that were a huge challenge for trucks running drayage in and out of the port here. Obviously, stopping a heavy loaded truck a bunch of times at a traffic light ruins its efficiency, increases its travel time, and there are all kinds of detrimental effects to that from an environmental perspective, to a mobility perspective, to a safety perspective. So anything we could do to improve that. We wanted to explore. And so we outfitted a few trucks at a facility here that was running constantly back and forth in and out of the port to be able to grant them freight signal priority and make sure that was an effective strategy as well. We also have a number of at-grade rail crossings here where we wanted to be able to demonstrate providing that information of a block crossing out to trucks trying to head in or out of the port. Because what it was resulting in was major queues of traffic waiting for these trains to pass by, as well as some risky maneuvers of trucks trying to turn around in roads and find other ways and alternate paths into alternate gates into the port. So if we could use our existing infrastructure to alert drivers over an information message through an MCAT device, we could mitigate those kind of risky maneuvers ahead of time and do what we can for them to have information to make decisions on how to get in and out of the port. So that was a fun deployment as well to see that automated process happening when those gates go down. Next slide, please. I mentioned our partnership with Array and Panasonic and Kia Georgia. Very cool applications there, and to see a very mature retrofitting of these vehicles with a brand motion display there, and the integrated OBUs into the vehicles, into the systems on the side of the road. This was our first CV2X deployment that we explored. Panasonic procured was able to receive an experimental license that these radios were operating on. Again, we focused initially on phase one on these rural interstate applications of spot weather alerts, back of queue alerts, and airbag deployment. And wanted to see if, as an agency, when we get this information in through connected vehicle infrastructure, how it could improve and inform our operations, especially on a rural interstate approach. We expanded this additionally out to a freight signal priority focus on the adjacent arterial that's in and out of the Kia Georgia plant. There's a number of suppliers that go in and out of that plant, and when they are late with their materials to delivery to that facility, the plant shuts down, and the damages that are incurred to those suppliers are tremendous, because when they can't make cars, they can't make money. And so anything that we could do to explore efficiencies of moving material in and out of that facility was a benefit to all. And so equipped 10 Kia Georgia vehicles with OBUs to be able to simulate that freight signal priority and understand where the benefits could be there from a manufacturing perspective. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that was our first CV2X deployment, and we have plans to continue to deploy and also eventually replace our DSRC or add to our DSRC deployments CV2X as well. To do those sorts of things costs money. And so a few years ago, we sat down to try to capture and write down what we had done in this space, where we had all gone and things we had tested, things we had deployed, and also look to where we wanted to go. And so we wrote this all down and captured in this document called our V2X roadmap, which is nothing all that extraordinary in and of itself, but within it, we included a funding plan of what it would be to continue to deploy, operate, and maintain this connected vehicle infrastructure, with some goals of things like equipping every signalized intersection on the state route system in the state in 10 years, outfitting every transit vehicle in Metro Atlanta with an onboard unit, continuing to develop and innovate and test and pilot different applications in this space, again, with that long horizon of being able to be ready for private vehicles from OEMs deployed with this technology. And so we arrived at a funding plan that was funded for the next 10 years, $75 million. And it's really enabled by the changes in the transportation infrastructure law, the bipartisan infrastructure law, that allowed 100% federal aid, which is a big deal for us for these kinds of applications. So this is our roadmap. We will be continuing to deploy around 400 RSUs across the state each year for the next 10 years, getting to that full build out look in the next year, 10 years. On top of that, in addition to that, so that's just speaking to signalized intersections, we're also looking at building out our interstates with additional coverage. We saw the benefits of what we deployed out on I-85 with Array, And so over the next few years, we will also be deploying out what we are calling full coverage on our interstate systems in the state of Georgia. And so that's deploying out roadside units at interchanges and some other critical points where we see the benefit of having that connectivity on the interstates, as well as the fiber backhaul to support all of those locations as well. So lots of deployment going on, mostly CB2X that we'll be deploying over the next few years. And again, we're only able to do that and to do it with the technical certainty we need because of organizations like you all and the support of your members that it brings us from a technical standpoint, especially. Next slide. That is it. I know that was a lot. I wanted to leave a little room for questions if there were any. I'm happy to entertain them and appreciate again the invitation to be able to speak with you all.
Alan, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. Are there any questions from the audience?
This is Bill McKinley here from Keysight. I do have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Great presentation, Alan. Really good to see what's going on. So now you have your initial CB2X deployment. I'm just curious, have you noticed any difference, or your folks, have you know any difference between the two technologies? Are they, from a performance, reliability, are they fundamentally the same? Any comments on
really
those, in that respect?
Comments to that. One, we're very limited in what we can turn on right now. Again, most of the CB2X radios we have are either sitting up on a pole dark or still in the box, because we can't turn them on yet because of the FCC. Where we have enabled it and turned it on, I'll caveat this with, we are not the amount of testing we may do on it is not probably to the extent where you may see some of these differences, but from our perspective, we have not seen any difference, good or bad, from compared to DSRC. Again, that's still limited, but we also have fairly limited technical resources to be able to measure any difference there.
Okay, good to know. And just for, are you requiring OmniAir certification for your deployments? Is that a mandate?
Yeah, so the current specification that we're procuring under, it does require very generally OmniAir certification. And that's something I think, me personally, we would continue to require. It gives us a level of certainty that what we're getting has gone through rigorous testing and evaluation, and makes life a lot easier for us as an agency who's that deployer and maintainer and side of things, to know what we're getting meets a certain level of standard.
Oh, that's music to our ears. That's great. Thanks. I'd like to take you coach you, if you don't mind, because you'd be amazed how much we have to convince people. But no, great. Thank you very much. Great answers. I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions for Alan?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Nishal Nayak with Marvin Products. We're a V2X software supplier. We're actually in the Georgia area and would love to get involved. So if you have kind of a path to getting involved, are you the right contact, or what do you suggest along those lines?
Yeah, please shoot me an email, give me a call. Happy to chat, especially if you're in Georgia. It's even better.
Perfect. Thank you.
Alan, this is Tony Vento, SEA. Very impressive update. What I'm wondering is you're early on. What about lessons learned? Will you be able to share these with other states so this can scale?
So yeah, we talk often and frequently with other states. We're part of the Connected Vehicle Pooled Fund study. We meet frequently with our peers to discuss a lot of these things. We've learned a lot from other states as well. So we frequently share lessons learned, and honestly, I think from the state's perspective, there's probably three groups of us overall, generally speaking. There's states like us, Ohio, Florida, Utah, who are Michigan, who are at the front of this, who have taken aggressive steps to deploy, and are continuing to deploy. There's also a big chunk of states in the middle who are either were kind of burned from the FCC's change in direction, or they're just kind of in that wait and see the kind of position. They see the benefit and want to participate, but they don't want to necessarily take risk in deployment of this. And there's a pile of states at the end who are won't do anything until they're required to. You know, things like this aren't necessarily a priority to them, which is fine. But amongst all those, I mean, even the Connected Vehicle Pool Fund, which facilitates a tremendous amount of information sharing and lessons learned. And I think we're over 30 members of that group. Some of that spills over even to the AV Pool Fund. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of information exchange among states that we have. I mean, just next month, a bunch of us are going to be meeting in Utah with Blaine Leonard to have a peer exchange and talk about these things and learn from one another. So there's a lot of that going on. The list of lessons we've learned is long and lengthy, and I won't take up all your time on that. But I will say one thing that I've learned is we still have and will have for some time a tremendous dependency on highly technical systems integrators in this space. Connected vehicles are from our perspective, making it work and making it work right is very complicated, requires a level of detail, and it's not just as simple as plugging it in and letting it run for a while. You've got to make sure it's doing it right. You've got to make sure your information you're sharing is correct and actionable. The entire security conversation around this is something that is new for a lot of agencies, and so there's a lot there.
All right, thanks, Alan. Bill, do you have another question?
Yeah, I do actually. Just from what Tony, your lessons learned, are you in discussion with OEMs at all, with vehicle manufacturers, and how is that relationship going? And also to first responders, emergency vehicles, or school buses, all these things. So do you have active conversations with them, and any lessons learned there? Thanks.
Let's see, how can I phrase this without getting myself in trouble? So we have had a lot of conversations with, I'll start with OEMs. The Connected Vehicle Pool Fund and their relationship with CAMP has been a huge avenue of conversation for us, and understanding the automakers' needs, what they may want from infrastructure, what they need. Sometimes we get frustrated at goalposts being moved with those guys, but it's been very productive and fruitful to have those conversations and work with them. In Georgia specifically, we have a huge investment from the Hyundai Motor Group, Hyundai and Kia, with the manufacturing facilities that they've built and are building in Georgia. And so that's fostered us to be able to have a relationship with some of their technical side of things that to talk with them. And then again, through different conversations and projects like this, we've been able to have some conversations. And so we welcome more of the conversations there. We always learn a lot from OEMs, especially on the technical side of what they may need from infrastructure and what we can or cannot do to meet those needs.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see. I finally caught out with people raising their hands. So
Not sure how to hit the hand raise button, see, but I do have a question.
go ahead.
So this is Jason Conley, and Al, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to present to us. I think it was really enlightening. I guess my final question would be, Georgia seems to have had a lot of success. I looked at that deployment map. There's a lot of deployments, even though some of those RSUs are dark right now because of the challenges with the FCC. But that type of deployment, especially with CVX being a long road, doesn't happen without political support and without engagement from the policymakers at all levels. And for state agencies, states or other agencies that are just really starting to dip their toe in the water for C-V2X or V2X deployments, did you have any sort of advice in building the support that Georgia's built over the years?
Oh gosh. So we've benefited tremendously from our executive leadership. Our CEO, Commissioner, is a huge advocate of technology like this and understands how it works and the benefits of it. And so when your top executive is somebody who's a champion for deployment of this technology, that helps a lot. And even over the past, I think 2 administrations from a gubernatorial standpoint in Georgia, much of their staff has been engaged in what technology investments could be made in Georgia to improve mobility and safety, and connectivity is always something that's at the top of that list. And so we've had a number of different champions organizationally who have been able to convey the message to leadership, both elected and appointed, to the benefits. There's been research that's been able to support, substantiate the wild claims we make. And then on top of all that, we're able to take the technology, show it working and show its benefit and say, see, here it is. Because I know for me, the concept of connected vehicles and how it works seemed like a waste of time until I saw it, until I rode around in a parking lot and saw the actual technology happening, had my hands on it, and things just started to click at that point of like, I get it now. These life-saving applications, these mobility increasing approaches to this technology are real, and I can see it, the path forward, the yellow brick road here. So for an agency like ours, who's challenged all the time to be able to make our roads safer and more efficient, this is such a great way to approach it, especially because when you look at deploying the radio like this at an intersection. So we've invested already on how to manage traffic with the latest gadgets and gizmos and systems to for everyday traffic management, which is a necessity in the Metro Atlanta area. Being able to add in a very relatively low cost device like an RSU to enable so much potential, it's quite frankly a no-brainer for us. It's so achievable and so tangible. Why would we not put those pieces in place to be able to support this for stuff we can do now and all the incredible things that we're going to be able to do in the future? And so we've just had a lot of support, a lot of champions over that, and a lot of demonstration of benefit and success over time. And so in a lot of ways, I think the technology and applications speak for themselves, but being able to effectively articulate and deploy it has been a big help for us.
Excellent, Alan. Thank you so much. Mr. Novosan, do you have any parting thoughts, any words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Well, I'd just like to thank Alan again for taking time to present to us. I know that Georgia is a leader in the field, and a lot of states and agencies look up to them to where they're going, and they're happy to share. So I would encourage you to reach out to Alan if you have any questions. And Alan, thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that brings to a conclusion our monthly membership meeting for July. Ms. Cantlow, when is our next monthly membership meeting?
Hi all, our next meeting is going to be on August 24th, same time. We'll be here at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We will also have our evening call, which is at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We would love to see you guys then.
Excellent, thank you. And wherever you are in the country, please stay cool today. Stay safe. Take care. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.